Chapter 1, Mystery Lights. Your beliefs will be the light by which you see, but they will not be what you see. They will not be a substitute for seeing. Flannery O'Connor. Mystery lights dance around the Bigfoot phenomenon like fireflies on a hot summer night. From ubiquitous reports of creatures' eyes glowing to those pesky UFOs, see Chapter 2. That just don't seem to want to let the Sasquatch have the weird spotlight all to themselves. Strange lights and Bigfoot are simply inseparable companions on their nighttime journeys. In discussing the eyes of Bigfoot and other animals used here in comparison, it is important to note the difference between eye shine and eye glow. Eye shine is common in many nocturnal species, and it is the result of a reflective layer of tissue in the eyes known as the tapetum lucidum. The tapetum lucidum is the reason, for instance, that deer eyes seem to light up when your car's headlights catch them. A source of light is required for eye shine. However, there must be something for the tapetum lucidum to reflect. Eye glow, on the other hand, refers to eyes illuminating independently rather than reflecting light from other sources. Some cryptozoologists prefer to dismiss every example of Bigfoot's glowing eyes as simple eye shine. It is admittedly far easier to wrap one's mind around eye shine than any other possible explanation. We have all seen eye shine, and we know it exists in the natural world. Should anyone ask, quote, why do so many Bigfoot reports include glowing eyes, unquote, many flesh and blood hypothesis, that is FNBH, advocates for a simple and concise answer: eye shine. Doubtless many Bigfoot reports of glowing eyes indicate eye shine. Witnessed as being reflected by the creature's eyes, it is, however, a bit premature to close the book on glowing eyes, chalk it up to tapetum lucidum, and declare, quote, problem solved, unquote. If we take Bigfoot to be natural animals, whether your guess is if they are some kind of undiscovered gorilla or relected hominid, they would undoubtedly fall within the family of great apes. And remember, humans too are great apes. If this is the case, the Bigfoot have a tapetum lucidum, and it would make them unique among all great apes, and indeed among the majority of primates. Primitive apes like lemurs have a tapetum lucidum, but great apes, they do not. Everyone has seen human eyes glowing red in photographs taken by means of flash photography. This does not indicate the existence of a tapetum lucidum in humans. A camera flash is bright enough to reflect off the retina. The crimson glow is actually the red blood vessels in the eyes, reflecting the harsh light of the flash back at the camera. Finding Bigfoot cast member and longtime Bigfoot researcher Cliff Barackman positions that Sasquatch eyes may quite be large, and thus their pupils open wide enough, wider than humans, which could allow for ambient light to be reflected back in much the same way that human eyes reflect camera flashes. It is difficult to imagine ambient light gathering in a sufficient quality to reflect back a steady and consistent glow. Barackman's hypothesis is still more consistent with great ape morphology than suggestions of a tapetum lucidum present in Bigfoot eyes. This concept, however, only explains glowing red eyes in Bigfoot creatures and does little to account for the varied colors of Bigfoot eye glow found in reports. Orange, green, white, yellow, and even blue. Interestingly, bears which do have a tapetum lucidum exhibit red, green, orange, and yellow eye shine. Short of the presence of a tapetum lucidum in what would be presumably a great ape, all of the theories for Bigfoot's multicolored glowing eyes fall short of satisfactorily explaining the phenomenon. Even if we imagine Bigfoot have highly reflective eyes, by whatever means, known or unknown, there remains a multitude of witnesses, insisting they have observed the creatures with self-illuminated eyes, not reflective eyeshine. That any natural animal could have glowing eyes is a biological wonder. Why bioluminescence does occur in nature, from fireflies to lanternfish, animals light up for reasons ranging from attracting a mate to self-defense. No species possesses glowing eyes, and none of them are mammals, much less great apes. With accounts of glowing eyes, we are confronted with yet again a major and oft-witnessed Bigfoot trait that simply does not align with our current understanding of biology. If Bigfoot is a natural creature, part of the recognized mammalian animal classes, wherever it falls therein, it is gifted with an astounding number of unique and highly specialized characteristics. Folklore, on the other hand, provides numerous examples of hairy beings gifted with glowing or flaming eyes. Peter Azerbaijan relates the tale of a glowed-eyed creature in his 1883 collection of Norwegian folklore titled Fairy and Folk Tales. Quote, I went into the stable first to see the horse and found him neighing and waiting for his hay. So I went up to the hayloft for an armful, but as I put out my hands, I caught hold of something hairy, like the ears of a dog. The next moment I saw two eyes red as fire glaring out at me in the darkness, unquote. The hairy fire-eyed creature in question turned out to be a rather angry brownie, a fairy who proceeded to kick the farmer out of the barn. Azerbaijan reported on another brownie's eyes glaring through the darkness. Quote, I couldn't see my hand before me, but I felt him plainly as now. When I touched you, he was hairy, and didn't his eyes glisten? Unquote. The jack-o'-lantern light-bearing fairies known to lead travelers astray had their American counterpart in the southern states known as the jack-o'-lantern, a, quote, hideous creature 5 feet in height, with goggly eyes and huge mouth, its body covered with long hair, in which goes leaping and bounding through the air like a gigantic grasshopper. This frightful apparition is stronger than any man and swifter than any horse, and compels its victims to follow it into the swamp where it leaves them to die, unquote. A Summer Night in their Norwegian Forest features an encounter with a wild man on a bridge. Quote, I saw a man coming towards me. He wasn't very tall, but he was terribly big. He was as broad as a barn door across the shoulders, and his hands were nearly a foot across the knuckles. He carried a leather bag in one hand and seemed to be talking to himself. When I came nearer to him, his eyes glistened like burning cinders, and they were as big as saucers. His hair stood out like bristles, and his beard was no better. I thought he was a terribly ugly brute, unquote. On his second encounter, the wild man is noted to have eyes that, quote, sparkled with fire, unquote. And a third encounter notes his eyes, quote, flashed like lightning. A Tale of a Headless Horseman from Ireland depicts the preternatural jockey holding his own head, from which bore a, quote, profusion of matted locks of lustreless blackness, unquote, and, quote, fiery eyes of prodigious circumference, with a strange and irregular motion, unquote, which, quote, flashed like meteors, unquote. The Names were a fairy race of hideous beings from Brittany with black hairy bodies and sparkling eyes, roughly analogous to the Scottish brownie. Though the devil himself can take many forms, he was often portrayed as half-human, half-hairy animal with, quote, glowing eyes and saturnine features, unquote. A multitude of demons in various guises also bore gleaming or fiery eyes. In the Anglo-Saxon epic poem Beowulf, the monster Grendel, The shadow-cloaked night stalker has eyes that produce an ugly light, most like flame. These archetypes stemmed beyond Western traditions. For example, ancient Persians feared the owl, a hairy swamp monster with glowing eyes and an appetite for children. Hindu legend holds that the Rakshasas were hairy cannibals with fiery eyes known to haunt cemeteries. Su Wukong, the Simien Monkey King of the famous Chinese Buddhist epic The Journey to the West, possessed, quote, fiery, unquote, eyes which could see great distances. The above examples amount to but a brief sampling. It would be easy to fill an entire book with tales of folkloric and supernatural creatures which gaze through gleaming eyes, from hairy goblins, orcs, werewolves, and wild men to hairless river-dwelling frogmen, specters, vampires, and more. The one thing all of these entities have in common, however, is the tales do not present them as natural animals, but rather the supernatural other. Fairies, ghosts, demons, giants, the undead, etc. New World wildmen and Bigfoot sightings with glowing oculi are as equally pervasive as Old World folkloric accounts of fiery eyes. This phenomenon's ubiquitous nature is expressed in reports separated by hundreds of years and thousands of miles. Momo, the town of Louisiana, Missouri's own Bigfoot creature, was reported as being a giant bipedal creature covered in ape-like hair with a huge pumpkin-headed head and orange glowing eyes. Northwest New Jersey's resident Bigfoot is actually known vicariously as the Big Red Eye or Old Red Eye, after its glowing red eyes. Other examples span the globe in chronological order, starting from the oldest. 1857 Oregon, a wild man reportedly abducts a youth in Oregon. After he is rescued, the young man describes his kidnapper as a, quote, man about 12 or 15 feet high, of athletic proportions, with glaring eyes which had the appearance of liquid balls of fire, unquote. 1884 Georgia. A wild man haunts Lookout Mountain, described by one witness as being, quote, of giant size and hairy as a Newfoundland dog, about 9 feet high, unquote, with, quote, an appearance of the most frightful nature, and growls equal to the lion, unquote. The wild man has eyes giving light equal to the moon. In 1890 California, a wild man walks into the campsite of some young men on Snow Mountain in September. One of the campers describes it as, quote, a long hair flowing in the midnight breezes, his chin resting almost on his sunken chest, his bony fingers bent like a cat's paw when about to spring, and from his eyes shone an unnatural light. 1892 California. Fresno witnesses see a, quote, naked human being with matted hair, flaming eyes, and limbs gnarled with muscles, who haunted a few vicarious woodsmen and scared them out of their wits. 1896 Pennsylvania. In July, a wild man chases berry pickers near Scranton. According to witnesses, quote, his eyes were flashing fire and he had every appearance of being insane, unquote. 1911 Pennsylvania. The town of Russell is haunted by a, quote, unknown monster, unquote, described as being tall, somewhat like a man, with large fiery eyes, and gives vent to blood-curdling shrieks when approached. The appearance of the monster in that quiet neighborhood is causing quite a deal of comment and speculation, unquote. 1947 Lithuania. Seven-year-old girl, Matezda Stonuki, is tending cows near Vilnius when one runs off. Matezda follows the bovine over the hills and into a clearing where she sees several tall humanoid figures covered in thick hair. She then describes the creatures as, quote, demonic, unquote, in appearance with glowing red eyes. When one of the creatures notices Matezda, she runs from the area. 1954, Nebraska. Several people in Ravenna report a 6 to 8 foot tall bipedal bear with the face of an ape. The creature has glowing red eyes. 1965, Indiana. March sees a 10-foot tall green hairy monster visit French Lick. Known as the, quote, fluorescent Freddy, unquote, to the local children, the green giant also possessed orange or red glowing eyes. 1966, Florida. 4 teenagers watch a smelly Bigfoot creature jump onto the hood of their car near the Inclinant River. The creature has eyes which glow green. 1974, Pennsylvania. In August, the community of Monogalska, Pennsylvania is host to a series of Bigfoot reports, along with tales of weird crying sounds heard at night, creatures walking upon the roofs of homes, peeking in windows, and stealing groceries. Comes another strange report. Ken R., a man working with Stan Gordon to investigate this strange phenomenon, visits a man immediately after he reports a strange creature. When he arrived, Ken finds the witness visibly disturbed, holding a shotgun while his wife clutches a Bible. The witnesses tell Kent that earlier that night he investigated the sound of a large, heavy Knox being thrown at his home. He noticed a loud noise as another large rock, too heavy for the witness to lift, landed on the front of his parked car. The man looked up to see what he called, quote, the devil in a nearby field, a tall, dark figure with green, glowing eyes. Afterwards, the couple's German Shepherd refused to leave its doghouse. 1975, New York. Cliff Sparks sees a Bigfoot on a Whitehall golf course in May. It is around 11 p.m. when Sparks sees the creature standing in the middle of the green. Quote, it sent the hair bristling on my neck, unquote. He says, quote, it gave the impression of great strength. It had large, long arms with those glowing red eyes and ran fast in an odd gait. 1975, Florida. Vietnam War veteran Jim Spink searches the wetlands for what he calls the Yeti. Spink has taken to living in the swamp, foregoing bathing, even without clothing, for months at a time. I'm trying to live like the Yeti, he says. I want to come to my tent, sit down, and let me have a look at it. Spink collects various reports of Florida Bigfoot with eyes, quote, glowing hot pink or yellow and cat-like. One night, while crouching on a branch high in a gumbo tree, Spink claims that the Florida Yeti comes and sits beside him. Spink is close enough to hear the creature's breathing. Quote, there's no doubt in my mind that he was in the tree with me, unquote. Spink reports, quote, I could see his big hairy shape and the glowing eyes. I sat very still, hoping not to scare him away. Spink almost runs into a creature on another night, which he crosses a mound, finding himself directly in the path of a Bigfoot, its glowing eyes staring him right in the face. Unprepared for this close encounter, Spink turns and runs in terror, cowering in his tent for the remainder of the night. 1978, Pennsylvania. A man walking his dog near Fawn Grove notices a 10-foot tall, hairy-covered biped. As the creature walks away, it turns its head to look back, showing shining white eyes. 1980, Kentucky. Charles Fulton is watching TV in his rural home in Mason County on October the 4th, 1980. When one of his children comes into the room and tells him someone was turning the knob on the back door of the home. Fulton believes his child is playing some sort of prank, and he sits the boy down to watch television. Quote, a few moments later, something like to have torn my front door off, unquote, Fulton later related. He opens the door to see a white, hairy bipedal creature over 7 feet tall running off from his porch. He procures a pistol and, seeing the creature in his backyard, takes aim. He says, quote, I fired at it twice from about 30 yards away, and I didn't see how I could have missed, unquote. The Bigfoot turns and flees in what Fulton describes as a slow motion gallop. Fulton said the creature had glowing eyes and hair like a horse's mane. 1981 Ohio. Farmers in Rome, Ohio experienced multiple encounters with Bigfoot-like creatures. They displayed behavior consistent with other such creatures, taking and eating the animal feed, attacking farm animals, peeking in the windows of the homes, and so forth. The creatures, which are observed multiple times by multiple witnesses, almost always display red glowing eyes. 1988 Pennsylvania. On May 17, 1988, Sam Sherry is lantern fishing on the Liliana Creek in Sleepy Hollow, Pennsylvania. After noticing a foul smell and hearing strange noises, he likens to, quote, monkey-like chattering, unquote, coming from the nearby woods. Sherry shines his flashlight in the direction of the sounds and sees orange eyes gleaming from the dark forest. A huge bipedal creature, almost 7 feet tall, appears about 20 feet from Sherry. He is quite stunned as he did not notice the creature walking from the woods. It has no neck, broad shoulders, and long arms that hang well below the knees when the creature stands erect. The creature appears very aged, bearing patchy skin and sparse hair as if suffered from something like the mange. The Bigfoot has a large head bigger than a soccer ball with 2 golf ball-sized eyes, glowing orange. Sherry notes its face is deeply wrinkled with a leather-like appearance and a large flat nose. Curiously, the creature seems sports of a mohawk haircut. Its head bare save for a strip of well-kept hair 2 inches wide from the top of its forehead to the back of its skull. It sputters, wheezes, and breathes loudly as if suffering from asthma or some other type of breathing condition. Sherry observes the creature continuously spitting saliva as it breathes in and out with pucked lips. When it begins swinging its arms, beating its chest, Sherry calmly walks back to his car, under the impression that the creature is not a threat, but merely putting on a kind of defensive display. Without the sound of footfall, the creature suddenly appears alongside Sherry, who thinks it has arrived much too fast to have physically run up on him. The creature brushes up against Sherry, touching his jacket with his hands. Sherry climbs in his car and closes the door, but the Bigfoot leans its head through the window, spitting and drooling on Sherry's face as it wheezes, its horrible breath reminding Sherry of spoiled seafood. Sherry starts his car and drives away, watching the creature stand in place with its right arm extended as if waving goodbye. 1992 Pennsylvania. On the night of May 30th, 1992, a man in Derry hears his dogs barking outside his mobile home. He grabs his rifle and steps outside to investigate, but it is confronted by a tall, hairy creature standing on 2 legs. It turns and walks away into the night. It possessed a pair of glowing red eyes. The man later reports he felt compelled to not shoot the creature. In the year 2000, Maryland, during the construction of Arneldo Mills Mall in Hanover, workers witnessed a 12-foot-tall creature with glowing red eyes in the woods nearby. 2004, Brazil. One February night, a woman and another family member are washing clothes on a riverbank in Penali when they notice movement on the foliage. Across the river, they see 2 5-foot creatures emerge from the woods. The anthropods are covered in thick black hair, and both creatures display glowing red eyes. The witnesses flee in fear. In 2019, Jeremy, a lifelong hunter and Texas resident, appeared on the Strange Familiars podcast to discuss his Bigfoot encounters. As a teenager, he observed what he believed at the time to be an escaped chimpanzee in the East Texas woods. The creature crossed in front of Jeremy's vehicle in broad daylight as he was driving back roads looking for deer. It was quadrupedal, running like an ape, yet would have been about 6 feet tall, and as it stood upright, quite large for a chimpanzee. Despite this early encounter with something simian in the woods of North America, Jeremy remained uninterested in the Bigfoot phenomenon until later in life. While recovering from an injury, Jeremy began watching YouTube videos where he stumbled upon stories of Bigfoot. These led him in turn to the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast, where he heard more Bigfoot stories from East Texas. Jeremy started visiting areas around the Sam Houston National Forest to look for Bigfoot. After a number of possible encounters, Jeremy heard loud tree breaks, growls, and what he suspected to be Bigfoot mimicking dogs and owls. On different occasions, he began noticing a white light in the woods. Now, from a distance, it appeared to be a single light, but when viewed through binoculars, Jeremy determined it was indeed two lights side by side like eyes. Quote, "They would move back and forth as I looked through the binoculars. You could tell that there was two eyes," unquote. He was adamant about the illumination was eye glow, not eye shine. Quote, "This was eye glow without me shining a light. There was no moonlight. There was no ambient light. I've hunted my entire life. I know what eye shine is," unquote. Jeremy returned to the location and saw on multiple occasions more than one set of eyes glowing from the darkness. Quote, "I saw another set of white eyes and then a set of red eyes," he recalled. "They're all eye glow. They all move. They duck. You can see them high, maybe 7 or 8 feet high, and then you'll see them down by the ground level, moving back and forth, trying to duck. They realize I'm looking at them," unquote. "The eye glow even changed colors. That one really bothered me," he said. "I've got goosebumps right now just talking about it, just thinking about it." Jeremy had driven down some dirt roads in the forest close to dusk. He stopped in a particularly remote area to pick up firewood for use at his campsite. Quote, "I got out of my Jeep and something screamed at me," unquote. Jeremy decided he should leave the area. On the way back to his camp, he caught sight of eye glow once more. Quote, "Through the trees, I could see two sets of eyes floating. They were moving so fluidly, not even making any noise that I could hear. It was two distinct set of eyes coming through the woods. Then they kind of split up and I lost them," unquote. Back at his campsite, Jeremy built a fire before relieving himself by the tree line. Looking into the woods, he spotted the eye glow again. "I see those eyes and they're almost as big as tennis balls. I'm not exaggerating. They were at least 9 inches to a foot apart." Jeremy also made out a silhouette of a creature by the light of his headlight. He recalls, "This thing was a monster. It was 10 foot. The size of this thing's head, though, the only thing I can say is it was a monster. I think maybe I pissed the thing off when I screamed at it. At that area that it was real remote, I got followed back to my campsite. This thing's eyes, not only were they that far apart, they were huge, and they were changing colors from green to blue to white to green to blue to white, from green to blue to white. They were changing that fast. I have never seen that before or since. I've never seen anything that big in my entire life." Jeremy returned to the camp and experienced more activity throughout the night, including what he believes were bluff chargers to the creature or creatures. They would ran at him from the woods. He spent the remainder of the night in his Jeep. He says it still makes me and shakes me up when I think about what in the hell I saw, he added. Beyond simple illumination, the eyes of large, hairy hominids sometimes emit beams of light. In the summer of 1972, a 15-year-old Bianca Esther Cardens-Rain was walking to her grandmother's house on an isolated hillside outside of Huladad, Chile, when a 6.5 tall creature climbed from a ditch alongside the road. It was covered in a long black hair and glared at her with large shining eyes. Paralyzed with fear, Bianca stared into the creature's eyes, which seemed to emit a fiery beam of light. She felt an electrical discharge, then began running towards the creature. As they ran towards the grandmother's house, the creature followed, making strange leaps and loud screeching sounds. At a clearing near the grandmother's house, the creature